So then I said, you really should take a look at the dragon's teeth, because that's where the actual treasure lies. And then the barbarian was stupid enough to actually look in. Oh wait, we're live. Anyhow.
Oh man, you got to finish that story for me sometime.
That was a good story. So, holy moly, there's a lot of chat going on. We didn't even start this thing, and I see a lot.
There's 44 people watching. They want to see this debate
52
in action.
It's just coming up.
Yeah, I was trying to read through it here to see it, what people were saying here, and how much pre-hate I'm getting.
Hey, it's not pre-hate.
I mean, there are people who disagreed with your takes, but I don't think that they're being too spicy about it in here. Not yet. But they said that they'd like to see more of a debate that is talking about the points rather than being heated. That's one thing that they mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I put that video out at like 10:30 in the morning on that. I don't even know when that got published, but like it was very much an emotional take from me for sure. There's no doubt about that.
So I want to say I'm the moderator, and we are here to discuss D&D Paizo content, great idea versus huge mistake. Stephen Glicker is here on behalf of Great Idea, and Derik Malenda is here on behalf of Huge Mistake. And that's Stephen Glicker from Roll for Combat and Derik Malenda from Knights of Last Call. I am going to admit that as the judge, I am biased because I'm pretty much in Stephen's camp on this, but I'm going to try to be a fair moderator for this debate. I'm biased because like when I was working at Paizo, right, like I was the design lead on Kingmaker, which was the previous hardcover AP that's being worked on, and that also has a 5e conversion. So I'm biased due to my knowledge from like being in the industry, but I'm going to be fair on this debate so we can hear both sides and let people kind of in the chat. We'll have questions that they'll ask to both of you here, and we'll let you just kind of say your pieces and try to avoid being like too heated and try to go talk about the points in a way that people want to see.
Wow, it's like a real debate. I can't believe it.
I mean, if it's a real debate, I mean, obviously Stephen has, he's holding all the cards, so I will acquiesce to that. But I mean, my emotional response to this, that is mine. Like that is not based in fact. I am disappointed.
So why are you disappointed?
So, one of the things that I have always been a big fan of a lot of role-playing game systems, even during the 90s when D&D 2nd edition was doing its thing. I played Earth Dawn, and I played the Dragonlance 5th edition or 5th Age Saga edition and a bunch of other games. And then D20 came out. I loved 3rd edition, but then for about a solid 8 years, everything was D20. And D20, it's like you couldn't sell a book without slapping a D20 system OGL logo on it. And to me, it really kind of became a big rut. I liked when 4th edition came out. I liked 4th edition too, but a lot of people didn't. And it almost kind of created this power vacuum. And suddenly you saw this huge rise of a bunch of indie game developers. This is where you've got your, Apocalypse Worlds and your Dungeon Worlds and your Blazes are all these games sort of bubbled up to the surface. Pathfinder 1 became a thing, right? Filling in that sort of vacuum left behind. And I kind of saw the rise of 5th edition and probably even a bigger scale than we saw with the D20 system as sort of more of the same. But I accepted that there were a lot of small press publishers who, because of the cost of scale and economies of scale, it made 100,000% sense for you to just produce your product and maybe make it for 5e, or if you're not making it for 5e, at least make it 5e compatible. But being a multi-million-dollar company with real structure and real overhead and real management and the whole shebang, my hope had been that Paizo would be a definitive alternative. I mean, 5th edition WotC is not tripping over themselves to make 5e or to make Pathfinder 2 versions of their adventure paths, right? So, this reversal of fortune to me, and you might say, well, it's a good move. It's everybody, rising tide helps all ships. But why now? Why do it now and not 2 years ago or 4 years ago? And I don't know. It's as someone who has embraced Pathfinder 2, especially as a YouTube content creator, I get messages all the time. Love your channel. When are you doing 5e? 5e, 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 5e. It's very easy to see that even within this group space, Nonat is our biggest number one. He's got 20K subs. Like, there are 5e creators with 300,000, 500,000 subs. It's easier to just go 5e. But if I start producing 5e content, is that good for Pathfinder 2? I don't think so.
It is. And I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you, let me give it a little history. So first of all, the whole reason I decided I wanted to do this little chat is because a lot of people have been coming out with videos, not just you, Derek, but I've seen a whole bunch of people. And one person said that Paizo was going to be hostily taken over by WotC, which, by the way, is not possible because they're not a public company. That's not how that works. We won't get into all of those things, but they were saying, oh, Paizo's in trouble, blah, blah, blah. You know, as someone who works closely with Paizo, you know, Roll for Combat is a partner. Obviously, I work very closely with a lot of the people at Paizo. Obviously, Mark works for me, and Mark was from Paizo, so I have a lot of insight. I also use the same publisher and printer, the same printer that Paizo uses, which is Regent. So I know a lot of what's going on with Paizo. Definitely more than any of the YouTubers, and probably more than even people, I'd even say at WotC, just because of my unique position.
That's a safe assumption. Well, educate me then, Stephen.
I'll tell you. So it's very simple. So you have Abomination Vaults, right? Here we go. Woohoo! This Abomination Vaults was their best-selling modules and sold out immediately. It sold out so fast, which is pretty stunning to say the least, and has had universal acclaim everywhere. And they announced, if you remember, like almost a year ago, that they were going to, instead of reprinting it, they were going to make a single hardcover book, like a 256-page hardcover book, and for Pathfinder, which is a smart idea because then you can go in, you can clean it up, you could adjust it, and also it's easier to sell because hardcover books sell and are easier to get into game stores than softcover. It's just math, and this is something I know from personal experience and all that. I
imagine there's like a higher markup, higher margin maybe on it.
It's just also shelf space because they'd rather buy one hardcover book than 3 soft covers. And
it's usually cheaper as well. It's just a point of order for the hardcover than buying all of the soft covers separately for the end consumer, while also, especially if it's not a conversion to a new edition, it's a much lighter lift than making a brand new adventure path. So I'll put that in and then go back.
Yeah, well, and let me just add one additional point as a sort of anecdotal evidence. While I have owned and read majority of the Paizo second edition APs, I don't think I've read all the Strength of Thousands, and I don't think I've read all of the Ruby Phoenix tournament one. The only second edition Paizo AP I've run is Abomination Vaults. The one that I give and this is Derek, my vote of approval for, my highest vote of approval is Abomination Vaults because of its dungeon delving focus. To me, that felt very in line with the type of adventuring and dungeon delving that I like to do. So it was also very much my favorite AP. Okay.
Ironically, I have not read the whole thing because Vanessa Hoskins, who's on my show, she wrote the second one, and we are toying with the idea of her running it for us, which would be awesome. But of course,
Hand of the Devil is very good.
Yeah, and
Stephen, her and I thought you said you were the forever GM.
I am the forever GM.
Be fun to see you. As
I know. Well, that's actually the whole point, because everyone would be like, "Wouldn't that be fun?" And I said, "Oh, it would be scary because I'm a bad player, as in I break the game way too much." But anyhow, and that was something we played. So I actually haven't read it that much. I mean, I've definitely skimmed it, and I know the general, but not enough that it would ruin it if I wanted to be a player. Anyhow, back to the original topic: is that they were already making a hardcover book. So this is in process. This is being done. Okay. They have a hardcover book. They have a hardcover book that's a good size. It's a good price point. It's 256-ish pages. And, it's a 3-module adventure, not a 6 one. So, those 6-module adventures, which they also have as hardcover books, are gargantuan. And quite frankly, the rule is no one, and I mean no one, plays 5e past level 10. We have a lot of evidence to show that. We have let's just say we have a lot of evidence to show that it's very rare and that the drop-off pretty much ends at 10th level. So this is perfect because this goes up to about like 10th, 12th level.
Yeah, I had wondered if the fact that it only goes to 10th level, and I had heard
that's a big part of it.
Same as you, that either 5e, people just drop off because that's just a natural drop-off point, and because it's quite broken.
Also because this is such a standalone adventure. I mean, think about this. It's a dungeon in a self-contained city that has a lot of good information in the actual adventure itself. So this thing is a standalone. You couldn't have asked for a better module or adventure to convert the 5e. It's like, oh, let's see. It's a bestseller. It's short enough that you can convert it to a book. It's self-contained, and we're going to do a hardcover book of it anyhow. As someone who is literally writing their own 3-part adventure path and is first writing it for Pathfinder and then converting it to 5e. Once you have all the words done, once you have all the maps, once you have all the art, and even the initial layout, doing the monster conversion and the DCs is like 15, 20, maybe 25% of the work. It's a small percentage.
But it is work.
Oh, it's definitely work. And they have sunk cost. But the amount of sunk cost is so much that why not convert it to 5e? And you put in advertisements, you show how good their adventure paths are. And then, one of the things is that I watched pretty much every video I can find on reviews of adventure paths from WotC. And every single review was just like, how much work do you as the GM need to do to fix the WotC adventure paths, from a lot to just some. I mean, it was just mind-boggling. Like, every single adventure path seemed to have issues. And I'm like, wow, I run adventure paths with almost little to no adjustments, or if I do, it's on the fly, because that's how Paizo writes them. And I think they're basically, using this as an opportunity to show, hey, look, here's a Paizo adventure path. It kicks ass. It's way better than the WotC ones. And why don't you come over if you like what you see, check it out.
Yes. So let's talk about that. Okay. Because I think one of the things that got debated a lot is, okay, for starters, full cloth, as a business decision, this is a no brainer. In fact, one could argue that the fact that they have announced that, they're very like, oh, this is a one-time thing and we're just doing it, like, to your end about we're converting it anyways. You could argue that it's silly and stupid that they don't do this for all their adventure paths, right? The 4 million plus D&D 5e players, right? If you could even get a few percentage of that, you're doing very, very well. So from a business perspective, from a Paizo money in their bank account perspective, this makes a ton of sense to me. And, certainly the issues with, being their overhead and paying people has been fairly publicized. And it'd be great for them to have more money in their coffers in order to pay for things. So from a business perspective, A+. And I've run and owned a few businesses, and you have to make decisions that are going to put money in your bank. So if that is the call, if that's the decision, we just want more money, that's fine. But this idea that people, because I went into the D&D Reddits and I looked at the D&D Reddits, not the Pathfinder 2e Reddits. I went into the D&D Reddits to see the reaction to this news. And overall, people were like, oh, that's cool. More adventures. Yeah, some of the WotC adventures suck. We don't really like them. I'll be happy if they convert. I can't wait to buy all their 5e products. That was kind of like the tone. And of course, it's anecdotal. That's 20, 25, 35 comments. But generally speaking, there's been, we talked about this on Tuesday, about the seemingly intractability or stubbornness of the 5e player to branch out of this. This, to me, is just evidence that for a 5e player, you go, see, I never have to change my system. All roads lead to 5e. And eventually, everyone is just going to convert their stuff for me anyways, and everything is for me, and I don't need to change my system. I like my system. I'd like more adventures. I'll buy that adventure too. And again, that's good for Paizo, which is awesome. I don't know that that's good for Pathfinder.
Well,
and as selfishly as a customer, that's where I get upset.
I see
Stephen,
that.
before you make your response, I want to make one point of clarification, which is Derik said, why are they doing this as a one-off instead of in all of their hardcover AP compendiums? And so far, we don't know like Kingmaker is the only other Pathfinder 2nd edition hardcover AP compendium, and it does have a 5e. So we don't know that they aren't going to do it for all of them. Like, this is not necessarily... We don't have enough data points to really know, and we actually saw 5e happen before that. So I will point that out, but then I want to let Stephen.
Yeah, I was just going off of things that Jason and whoever posted the announcement said in the Paizo forum, where they said this is, and again, it was all corporate speak. At this time, we have no future other plan.
They always say that. If you saw the Rise of the Rune Lords Anniversary Edition when that came out, as a fan, I saw the announcement. People like, what about other APs? And it said, at this time, we have no plans for any others. And then Curse of the Crimson Throne came out, and others.
Sure. Well, they said they were never going to do it again because it was so much work. And then I remember that in the talks. And then they're like, oh, the Crimson Throne came out. I was like, I thought you said you were never ever going to do it again because it was so much work. But,
so sorry for the digression, because Derik, you made a good point about, does this show 5e players that they can just
that they don't need to do
there,
anything,
let everything go there?
Right,
and
everyone's going to move over to them.
You were going to have a response.
Oh, I got a response. The response is, it's interesting. I didn't read the 5e Reddits yesterday, but I have read the 5e Reddits when they came out with their last book, which was supposed to be the sneak preview of 5.5 or 6.0, and everyone on those Reddits was horribly disappointed that the newest book basically was just lore changes, and there was no crunch added, no rules mechanics. And if you see, a lot of the requests is pretty much what's already in Pathfinder. There's a lot of people out there who are very disappointed that D&D 5.5 or 6.0 isn't going all Pathfinder and adding a huge amount of crunch, a real math system, a real economy. I can go on and on. There's a lot of things they want added to the game, and it looks like that they're not doing it. So if anything, I think Paizos thinking, look, we're not giving up the ghost here and waving the white flag. If anything, we're showing, hey, not only do we have better adventures, but maybe we have a better system too. It's like, if you like what you see, maybe you should come over and check out Pathfinder and see a system that treats you like an actual player and not someone who is sort of just a storyteller. If you like crunch, and if you like numbers, and if you like math, you could check out our system. And I think it's a good way to expose people to Paizo indirectly. And this, by the way, is something, I have an ad background. We do this all the time in advertising. We try to, get people through side doors or back channels. And this is a classic back channel maneuver where you're using your product. Yes, it's 5e. And I think in this case, it's like, oh, it's 5e. How dare you, make a Pathfinder product 5e? Well, I didn't see anyone going crazy when they made the computer games. I mean,
sure, but even the computer games and Kingmaker, right? We're technically made by subsidiaries, and I know. Right. Look, I get it. Everybody lives in Seattle. Everybody from WotC is hanging out with everybody from Paizo, and they're all hanging out with the people from Legendary Games. I get that, but at the end of the day, these are different companies, and there's an element here of, I don't know, stand behind your product. I don't know. It just feels to me like, even if it is a good money play, I think for me, I worry about the image and the attitude that it presents into the 5e players' mindset. And yes, I mean, obviously they're going to be, as you grow the base from 4 million players to 6 million players to 8 million players. And I mean, right, everything we've seen, if I'm an analyst for my company, would suggest that growth is going to continue. It's not going to abate. But there's an element here of like, is that what the industry is now? Just fighting for scraps from WotC's table?
I don't think it's fighting for scraps.
I have a related question for both panelists that I'll ask to Derik first, and then I'll let Stephen respond if he has a response, which is, so you, Derik, you went on and you checked what the 5e responses were in general to this announcement. And it sounded like people were excited about getting the adventure, but they didn't sound like they were very excited about switching to Pathfinder. They just wanted the adventure in 5e. My question is, what percentage of the people that are in the 5e pool who are going to check out this adventure would need to therefore, kind of start watching Pathfinder news, decide they might want to check out a Pathfinder Reddit or try out Pathfinder, look it up on Nethys for it to be a huge value for Paizo. Like,
probably very small.
Is at what percentage would it have to be before Paizo got a big gain?
Yeah, again, to be very honest with you, very small. I mean, like I said, this could be one of the smallest selling 5e adventures of all time, and it would still be one of the biggest adventures for any other publisher, because when you can, a small percentage of that player base is probably bigger than most games could hope to do. So yeah, I mean, I think that is a very real consideration. But we're talking about it's not just about, again, from a business perspective, I get it. I'm just saying about the idea of planting your flag and having a tentpole system and trying to be a legitimate competitor to these games. Now, listen, I'm an outlier. I've discussed this many times. In the last month, I've spent over $500 on brand new RPG systems. I get that most people don't do that. For a lot of people, RPGs are a very expensive hobby, and it's a sunk cost. You buy Tasha's, you buy, Xanathars, you buy whatever,
Mm-hmm.
You're not switching. That is a very expensive cost in time and money. And the thing that might have gotten you to switch is, hey, but look at all these cool adventures.
I disagree, because right now people are getting older who are playing D&D, and they're getting to the point that they'll have disposable income. I know plenty of people who have switched. Personally, I know a lot of people. I mean, technically everyone who plays Pathfinder now switched over. So if you think about it that way, there will be people who switch over. And also, I think Paizo smells blood in the water because, and I've said this publicly 1,000 times, the next version of D&D is not going to be that big of a change. The next version of D&D is going to be in D&D with much softer lore. It's going to be the same game. What do they call it? And they're not going to call it anything. They're not going to call it 5.5. They're going to call it D&D.
Yeah.
And I think a lot, and I mean a lot of people are going to be very disappointed when they find that out and they see it. And it already happened this season when they came out with, what was that book they just came out with? The Menagerie, I forgot the name of the book, but the latest one that just came out. And there was a lot of people upset. So this is as good a time as any to have people start looking at Paizo. So they're getting their toe in the water, and what a better way than to come out with their own product, I mean, they've already done as much as, I feel like Paizo has kind of done as much as they can to try to convert people and get them over.
You think?
Well,
I don't know.
I don't think, okay, let me rephrase that. I think
the Paizo Livestream had 7 people the other day.
Well, because we were up against them.
Okay, well, what does that say? What does that say?
Actually, a Paizo live stream?
It was.
Or was it a Paizo sponsored?
No, it was their live stream.
It was their live stream. So what does that say when, I mean, no offense to us, right? But, especially to you guys, but what does it say when a third party, what does it say when a third party publisher can get more, traction on a live stream than the core company?
Well,
what was Paizo doing yesterday? It was
2 days ago. It was 2 days ago.
I don't even know.
It was them discussing. They announced this book 2 days ago. It was their like monthly, semi-monthly live stream where they go through.
I thought those were always on Friday for some reason.
Yeah, they did it. It was kind of a weird timing, but
usually those got way more than 7 people. That is
well,
unusual.
I think it went up higher, but it was at the same time as us. And second of all, I'd argue that we're a second party publisher at this point.
All right, I'll buy that.
Which is a whole other difference.
Because you're a licensed partner.
Yeah, well, it's a significant difference.
Second party, but
Mark,
by
also,
virtue of the definition that is used in video games because of the 5e conversion.
Yeah.
Second party is usually exclusive.
Yeah. Wait, so anyhow, Ben Asaro, $10. I haven't heard any evidence that says this is a good idea. This is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Diversity. Oh no, it's not a good idea. Oh, I guess I lost. Oh well.
if we go based on dollars,
based on super chats, then
I already lost. I lost. It's $10 to $0.
If you go by number of people, it doesn't seem that way in the chat right now.
Well, no, of course not. And I think that it really surprises me. And honestly, maybe I'm I've been a data and a numbers guy for 20 years. I worked in the insurance industry. I am by nature pessimistic. I am by nature cynical. When I see things statistically, they usually work out poorly. So it is in my nature, I will admit, to be pessimistic and cynical. And usually when things are done from a business standpoint, it usually, in my personal experience, does not always end up well for the end consumer. I guess I just imagine a scenario where they release this in October. And what if this does 5x sales on what they sold is their best-selling Adventure Path, from your own mouth? What if they sell 5 times as many copies of this thing in 5e as they did for Pathfinder 2nd edition? If you're Paizo, you can't ignore that, right?
Yeah,
so I want to clarify my question I asked you before was not about whether it would sell copies to 5e players, but how many percentage of the ones who buy it check out Pathfinder before it becomes an advantage to Pathfinder as a system. Before we get into Stephen's response to that question.
Fair enough. A very small percentage, but a very small percentage of a much larger number is still can be a sizable number. So yes, growth.
All right. So Stephen, do you have a response to Derik as to Derik was bringing up the point that if it sells way better than the Pathfinder version of the same adventure, could that change Paizo's priorities?
Yes and no. I mean, Paizo, as you know, Mark, schedules their books years in advance. So this is like, turning a tanker. This is not something they would do quickly. So it would take a while for this to happen. I actually legitimately think there could be an issue. However, do I think Paizo would suddenly just say, we give up, we're just going to publish 5e? No, because their company's not built to do that. But do I think that they will actually convert more of their books from Pathfinder to 5e? Yeah, because it's much easier to do it that way. As someone who's doing it right now, I need to leave right this second because I have a collapsed pipe in my house and the plumber's here.
Oh no!
So you guys talk. I'll be right back. Hold on.
I think that you might have lost by defaulting. Then I guess
that's 2 for 2.
Yeah, I think that you lost at least that point by running away to go to the collapsed pipe. So that's very interesting.
All right, Mark.
I will say this in terms of the amount of effort I can speak to, that it's not insubstantial, but it is definitely less than the main event. And that's important because if you people were putting out 25% earlier of the work.
Yeah, Stephen did that.
Stephen put that. Let's even say it was 50, which is obviously an overestimate.
Correct.
So if we think it's 50% of the work, and let's say it sells exactly the same amount as the Pathfinder version did.
Right, that's a win.
Then that means that if you kind of just like what we're doing with Battlezoo, where we have a different team that's not really slowing us down doing 5e conversion. I do check all of those, so it's not completely nothing. But if you hire another person who can do twice as many conversions as a person who is making the new APs makes new APs, then they're bringing in twice as much. Right. And that allows you to not only either pay more to staffers who are underpaid, I can tell you that at Paizo, or hire someone else to put out more Pathfinder content. So somehow the 5e content actually could add to Pathfinder content instead of taking away. So I will put that out from a production standpoint.
Sure.
Since Stephen's not here.
That's right. But, and we could go into this, but I will wait for Stephen to come back. So, but while Mark, I'm going to ask you why I got you here, Mark. Damn it.
What? I didn't hear any of that, by the way.
I was going to ask Mark. I was going to make Mark explain to me. No, not apologize to me.
Who?
For the open lock action. What? The open lock action.
Open lock? You mean pick lock?
Pick lock. Sorry. Yeah.
2 actions, buddy. You can take a feat to make it 1, which half my players did this level.
The failure is nothing happens, and the critical failure is you lose a 3 copper piece lock pick.
I thought
you're rolling a bunch, and then you need multiple successes to get through a door. Sometimes it's
I love that.
I'll explain that one to you, because the problem with a system that has only 4 degrees of success, which I made the 4 degrees of success originally. It's an advantage. Yeah, it's my favorite.
It's a great part of the system. Yes.
About the system, even above the 3-action economy, because I'm super biased. However,
I actually agree. I agree with you completely that is actually better than the 3-action.
I also agree that you're super biased, Mark.
Important and really good. But so we actually all agree on that one thing. But the problem is that's not enough to actually make lock picking and having a lock on the door make sense.
Correct.
Because of the fact that a random beggar on the street can pick into, if there's only one success required, a random beggar on the street can pick into a lock of up to DC 29 with a +0 modifier with 2 minutes.
Right.
And that is not enough deterrence. It does not take long enough. So by making you require a certain number of successes, where a critical failure also removes the success if you had one already, it makes it so that it actually will take hours for that random beggar on the street to defeat like a DC 29 lock, right. if at all, maybe days of picking the lock.
But it also just turns into a very bureaucratic dice spamming process.
Oh, sure. No contest.
Well, do what I do.
It can be an issue.
My house rule is the lock explodes when they have a critical failure. There you go.
No contest that if it's an easy task for your group, that you can even just hand wave.
Yeah, I actually hand wave it sometimes. But
the main point is to keep people who are much worse than the lock from getting through a lot they shouldn't be able to get through, essentially, or make it so that it makes sense to have locks on your door because they actually keep somebody out. Right. Kieran Robbins in the chat is correct that it's a little bit of simulation versus gamism.
Hey man, you can't. Not all the rules can be perfect.
It was tough. We wanted something that had both and had our cake and eat it too, and we couldn't come up with any.
By the way, I'll add this. Our favorite implementation of pick lock though is definitely the gunslinger's ability to shoot the lock and not damage it, but pick it.
Yeah, that's the best. It's hilarious.
We actually joked. We joked around. We were going to make a skit, but we never did that. We were imagining a scenario where a gunslinger is going to try to pick the lock with blast lock, and we looked and we were just joking because it's one of those funny things when you look at it and we go, "Oh, we're like, well, you could blast it a couple times around." We're like, "Damn it! It has the attack trait."
Yeah.
We're like, you'll get multiple attack penalty to these checks, and we're like, "Damn it!" So we're like, somebody should go around to the other side of the door and flank it. That way, it's a lower DC to blast the lock. But we were, obviously it doesn't do that. But we were just joking that would be funny.
So where did we last leave off?
All right, so we left off with your pipe exploding. But
I did. I know.
Your pipe exploded. I think we were talking about
bad. You don't want pipes exploding.
The production that it takes. Somebody is going to have to be working on the 5e conversion.
Yeah, right. Converting.
I made
my response was, it's okay if the Abomination Vaults it could be converted, and even if it. Maybe if it doesn't convert, maybe if Paizo were to create whole cloth, brand new 5e adventure and it sells 5 times as well as their best selling. Right. At what point does Paizo go, okay, 50%, 60%, 70% of our revenue stream is coming from 5th edition. Are we just a 5th edition publishing house? I don't know. The growth of the 5e market is so alluring from a business perspective. I get and here's the thing: when you're a small, if you're John Harper and you're making Blades in the Dark, you don't give a shit. You're just doing whatever you want to do, and you're going to make your games and you're going to make your money.
Okay, actually, I can answer this.
Okay.
So my experience is that I will say for Battlezoo line, the split is approximately 50-50. So about 50% is Pathfinder 2 and 50% is 5e. The difference between the two audiences could not be more different. I can't get into why, but they're extremely different. And this is through my personal experience talking and working with these people. It's literally night and day. And I think it's funny because from a surface point of view, I think everyone is the same, but just,
Are we talking demographics here?
No.
Okay.
Mentality. I think it's just mentality is very different.
You're saying the 5e mentality, what that customer base wants and expects out of a product.
Yes,
it may be very different from what a Pathfinder 2 player wants and expects out of a product. Okay,
and
I believe that. I mean,
it's very different, and I think Paizo knows this, and I think they know their audience very well from my many discussions with Eric Mona, and I think they are a good example was my first company, my vice president. And I built, websites for a living, and she didn't use a computer until she was in her 20s. And she was like a natural. She was so good at computers and computer graphics and just building websites. She was amazing. And she just was never exposed to computers until she was in her mid-20s. And it was just like, wow, can you imagine if I won my whole life? Or like what prevented me from it? I think that's part of it. I think it's that a lot of people maybe are Paizo people or Pathfinder people that are playing 5e and just don't know it yet. And then hopefully if they play this product, it'll expose them and realize, oh, maybe I want to move over. And I think this is a good way to bring those people over. And I don't think they'll convert to 5e because I don't think, yes, they would have to abandon their audience. They would have to abandon their audience. They'd have to abandon all these people. But keep in mind that even if they did that, Pathfinder 2nd Edition will exist even if Paizo goes out of business one day. Of course.
Yep.
So, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I think the rules lawyer, Ronald, he made a thing and he talked about, he goes, look, and if that happens, like, then maybe Paizo gets Paizoed, I think we talked even a little bit about that on Tuesday, right? The idea of like, well, then another company that is producing content for Pathfinder 2 might step in and become the Pathfinder 2 people. But it's like, but if the market share of 5e is so large, like, do you want to live in a world where every Kickstarter is just 5e?
No,
compatible. Like
that's why I literally
you have the financial freedom and you have the
not unlimited. I mean, it was a huge risk.
It's pretty high compared to most people, Stephen. I'm gonna give Derik that one sub point. Fine. And I'm gonna ask another question to both of you, which is, Derik said that like if the 5e version sold some number of times more than the Adventure Path for Pathfinder's 2nd Edition, that it could cause Paizo to decide just to do 5e products. How many times more?
Or even just take away from Pathfinder 2 development. Let me be clear about that.
How many times more do you think that a 5e Adventure Path would have to sell before it started challenging like the rules line and Lost Omens and all of that other stuff that is obviously in Pathfinder 2nd Edition right now? Like the rules line is rules and it's coming out to support the game.
I would have no idea.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I mean, it's also a very interesting time because with Paizo right now, I mean, the initial owners, like Lisa, Vic, and I forgot who else is the owners.
They're stepping away, right?
Lisa and Vic are the owners.
Are the owners. Lisa and Vic. They're stepping away. They're I'm not privy to who still owns or will own Paizo and how the shares are distributed, but Lisa Stevens loves Pathfinder and loves Paizo. So, there's no hostile takeover. It's a privately owned company. If Lisa Stevens decides we're going to be making Pathfinder no matter what, whether we're making money or not, well, then they will. That's the whim of a couple of people. It also is that if they say, oh, well, we're going to make only Starfinder and no more Pathfinder, that's also their whim. Like they can do whatever they want.
Does the union change the math on that?
Union will change, not the math, but it changes things.
Or the management priority or the management strategy.
So
yes,
unions
definitely.
As a member of the union before I joined Roll for Combat, unions have mandatory topics that are mainly going to be about how the employees interact with the company and how things happen to the employees. Now, whether or not that means that the employees negotiate better communication and say on certain topics, that's something that's sort of discretionary and will depend on how the agreement works. But that's not something that is automatically always in every union contract in the same way as things like wages.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say because, like, right now, Hasbro's in a really weird spot because Hasbro, I think, was taken by surprise by everything. I mean, by the pandemic, by how well D&D is doing, how their president stepped down, and now the new president led WotC. I mean, there's a lot going on in Hasbro right now.
I know three. I know the three owners of the three favorite local game stores. Shout out Mr. Cars and Comics and shout out Great Lakes Game Emporium. And all of them have said that the last 2 years have been the best years for them in business.
Oh
ever.
God, yeah. I went to Gamma and they said they were giving out awards and they were like, oh, the award for the person of the year was COVID, because they said COVID made their, I mean, this was like on the side. This wasn't a real award. They did amazing business because of COVID.
Like you said, I mean, when they used to do the Wizards and digital game, right? Because I've obviously been a big Magic fan for a long time. When they did the Wizards and digital game, they didn't even talk about D&D. It didn't even get brought up at investor meeting.
Never comes up.
And now it is. So it's like, when you start talking about an industry that might be 100, 200 million, maybe it's on its way to being $250 million or more industry.
Well,
right?
WotC just made $1 billion for the first time ever.
Right, but how much of that is Magic the Gathering? Just
no one knows exactly.
They don't break it down, right?
They don't break it down.
Yeah, I looked through their filing, but like we have to assume, right, that tabletop role playing is 100.
I actually do know the numbers because I got them from Gamma, and overall, oh wait, I have it. I actually have. Let me find my notes. I have my notes.
He's got notes. I'm screwed. I don't.
Oh, you are screwed. Well,
notes,
I went
that's breaking pipes. That's your
I know.
Well, the pipe is your biggest ally right now.
That's true.
Look at this. This is all I got from Gamma. Trying to find my notes, but it broke down in the industry. Oh, here it is. Here we go. The ICV correspondence.
Yep.
my actual
which
book.
Is like our best look into this, but is very, very limited.
As a former statistician and analytics for a Fortune 100 company, we would say it's directionally correct. There's growth numbers, by the way. Hobby growth rate. So every single year, by the way, has gone up, except 2008 was minus 5%. I know you can't see this unless you're looking at the actual chat, but 2021, 30% increase, 2020, 15, 2019, 5%, 2018, 10%. But, every year it goes up. And you can see last 2 years was 15 and 30%. 30% is a gargantuan amount. Huge.
Yeah.
Especially after a decade of continued growth.
Yeah. You cannot. And in fact, here we go. Let's see what this says here right now. And this is actually interesting. This is a fall 2021, a blowout season for tabletop collectible games, basically Pokemon. So I do know, I'm trying to find the actual numbers, but the numbers is that within the industry, role-playing and tabletop is still the smallest percentage.
Sure.
And without any contest whatsoever, collectibles, here it is, I found it, collectible card games just absolutely destroy everything else by a huge margin. Pokemon and Magic are pretty good. Pokemon and Magic, correct. Those are the two ones. But even in that, I mean, here's the chart. Top collectible card games. Pokemon's number 1, Magic number 2. But
number 3, Flesh and Blood.
Actually, Yu-Gi-Oh's number 3, but number 4 is D&D Icons of the Realm by WizKids.
All the minis.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, but number 9 is Pathfinder Battles by WizKids. So, you see, it's not doing so poorly, D&D and Pathfinder. But also here's probably the most interesting part. So we have the top 5 role-playing games. I'm holding this up. And this was for fall 2021. Dungeons and Dragons #1, Pathfinder #2. But this is what caught everyone's eye. #3 was D&D 5e by Goodman Games. That's number
one and it's #1 and #3.
Weirdly, it is, because Goodman Games is taking the classic modules and reprinting them for 5e, and they're selling so well that they're on their own. They're on the list as their own product, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. So, right. Which brings me back to even your topic. It's like, what is the number that, Paizo just says, screw it, let's just do 5e all the time?
Or even to the point where they say, hey, listen, you know how we produce like 12 hardcovers a year, between Lost Omens and between, class archetype books and all this other stuff, and adventures, we do, 2 to 3 adventure paths a year. I guess I look at companies and I respect that they have these obligations to their employees. They have obligations to any investors that do exist, whether they're publicly traded or not, to ownership, to management. And at a certain point, as this pie continues to grow, I mean, you mentioned that you think that 5e is going to kind of de-evolve into an even simplistic form. I agree with you, but I still think it's going to outsell everything else, and then some. And like at a certain point, if that 5e player base becomes 8 million players,
I'm going to tell you something, and this is the hope, okay? And I've seen this happen in pretty much every nerd hobby in the world. I mean, if you think about, I mean, I'm older than both of you, but I remember talking to my friends when Lord of the Rings was like winning Oscars, and everyone was talking about it. It's like, did you ever think that in your lifetime that your grandparents, or like your aunt or someone down the street who obviously has nothing to do with fantasy would be talking about Lord of the Rings? And the answer is no. Not even in my lifetime, let alone ever. And it happened in the world. And this was interesting. I saw the conference. This was a conference given at Gamma, which is the trade show for store owners mostly, and in this hobby. And the ICV2 people gave this talk. And what he talked about is that he said, we are still an itty bitty teeny tiny little tiny hobby. It is so small compared to the rest of the world and the rest of the United States. And so, yes, WotC is gigantic and D&D is gigantic, but it's not, if you compare it to the world of Pokemon or Marvel or Disney or anything else, it's still this itty bitty tiny piece. And maybe Paizo is thinking, you know what? Yes, D&D is huge right now, but you never know, because when things start to explode and get very big, I've seen big brands lose.
Sure.
And in fact, I mean, your first one, it's like the old, the Dow 100 from 100 years ago. If you look at all the companies in the Dow 100, the Dow 30. If you look at the Dow 30, how many of those companies exist? One. Right. It's like these, companies come and go. IBM used to be one of the biggest companies in the world. When's the last time you heard someone talk about IBM? It's like,
but if I had to bet whether or not D&D is going to be around for the next 10 to 15, 20 years, I'm going to bet yes.
I'm going to bet yes too, but let's just say the hobby explodes and it goes from a $1 billion dollar hobby to a $10 billion hobby. What happens if Paizo can still keep on? Maybe let's just say Paizo gets 10% of that pie. Well, suddenly they go from 100 million to $1 billion. Does it really matter that WotC has 9 billion of that dollars? I don't think so.
No, but that's another thing too. Like from I mean, I don't know that he was specifically responding to me, but like Jason made a tweet and he said, hey, Paizo is fine. We're growing. Michael, is his name Michael Sayer? Michael Sayer?
Yeah. Mike Sayer.
Yeah. He put a comment on my YouTube video and he was talking about continued growth and sustained growth, and we're doing great and everything's doing so. Okay, well then why are you selling 5e products then?
Because they are doing great though. They're growing in size. But this way, companies that continuously hire more people and continuously get bigger are not doing poorly.
Sure. I guess what I'm saying is why that it seems so incongruent to me, because if if they need money and they want more money,
I don't think they need money. I think they want. I think they need younger and newer players. Because if you go to PaizoCon, or if you go to the Gen Con Sagamore Ballroom, and you look around at many of the players, and then you compare that to a D&D game, how do I put this gently? They're much older. Sure. There's a lot more males. And, you know, the demographic is that, now I'm talking about real demographic, it is slightly skewed older, which is better in terms of they have more disposable income and more money. And D&D is definitely, I would say, a younger product. So they need to figure out how to increase their market share with the younger crowd, or their people will literally die out. They will, their market will die out.
Give a point of information on this one. Mike Sayer is definitely on point when he said that several recent products even like outpaced expectations, even knowing that they were growing. They sold way more than expected. However, whether Paizo is doing better than before doesn't necessarily mean, you know, that it's paying high enough wages to everyone, or that it's, you know, that there's enough people to not have crunch. So Paizo is doing better and better, but I think that Paizo would like to be doing better by all of the people at Paizo.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it makes sense, even if you're doing well, to try to find additional ways to get revenue streams.
I have no problem.
They were already doing 5e. They didn't change.
Yeah, I have no problem with
after the new recent good sales. That Kingmaker 5e was before Pathfinder 2nd edition even came out.
Sure, but I'm saying I have no problem with a company trying to make money, right? I have no problem with a company trying to cash in on the 5e whale, right? That's fine. That's absolutely fine. I guess what I'm trying to say is, okay, so there's several of us in the YouTube space. There's How It's Played. There's Rules Lawyer. You know, there's me. You know, should
no Nat.
And again, we're pretty small. No Nat, of course. You know, should I start making 5e content on my channel so that and 5e adventures on my channel so that people come to my channel because now it's 5e. They'll come here. And then they'll see that there's also Pathfinder 2 content, and then they might become interested. I don't know.
Does Nona do some 5e
He
content?
does.
He does do. Apparently, he does some 5e content, but I don't think.
Well, you were asking if you were going to make some 5e content, right?
Well,
not whether you would convert entirely.
Yeah, I guess what I'm just trying to say is it's just like it seems to me like when you're, you know, if you're number 85 and you go, okay, look, I'm going to make. You know, I'm the number 85 RPG. If you're Legend of the Five Rings, Edge Studio is releasing a 5e version of the game. There was a lot of hubbub because the Doctor Who game is going to be 5e, and people were throwing their arms up in disgust, saying, "Why the hell is this, you know, being 5e?" And even the publishers from Edge Studios and the lead designer, he did a podcast and he said, "Listen, Legend of the Five Rings is about courtly drama between samurai and the balance between your obligation, your duty." He goes, 5th edition is terrible at implementing this. We had to, you know, create a class. Every class had to be able to do something in combat because that's what 5e is based around. He goes, this is not really, in my opinion, Legend of the Five Rings. We just needed money. Like, that's a fine excuse when you are a very small publisher with extremely small overhead.
Yes. Okay. So that I know why,
but
because
Paizo's not Paizo. That's not Paizo.
Okay. Wait. So Dark Souls did the same thing.
Dark Souls did the same
thing. And Dark Souls is, if you read the Dark Souls rules, it has zero to do with. In fact, I don't even know why it's 5. You know why it's 5e? It's 5e because 5e sells. And I was at Gamma, I was talking to the retailers, and their 5e books sell. And if it has the 5e on it, people will gravitate towards it and buy it. And I guarantee that Dark Souls could have just written their own system. And they didn't. They decided to make, you know, a quote 5e compatible game, when really it's not. It's not a 5e compatible, it's its own system, which also makes it so fascinating that Hasbro is doing the Essence 20 system for
G.I. Joe.
Yeah, G.I. Joe and all those others from Renegade. And I'm like, wow, they don't even use their own system. They're using a different system, which is stunning in its own right.
Well, when you're on top, you know, it's good to be the king.
It is good to be the king. But it shows you that, you know, I think a lot of these companies are making things, quote, 5e because it sells. Now, in terms of myself, I mean, think about it. I'm going to do a Kickstarter. It's last year, and I invested a lot of money in.
We talked about this on Tuesday.
Yeah, we talked about it Tuesday. And should I just done 5e, which I knew would have done well? And everyone I spoke to was like, Pathfinder does not sell. It does not sell. Look at Pathfinder Kickstarters. The few that were on there did terrible.
Yes, they did.
And so why would I do it? And the answer was because I love Pathfinder. And I want to support Pathfinder. I want to support Eric. I want to support Paizo. I want everyone at Paizo to keep their jobs. I want everyone at Paizo to do well. And to the point that I even hire them, not just because they do great content, because I support them. I want to support these people because I love Pathfinder that much.
You're hamstringing them. You're taking their best.
Only one.
Not counting me.
Only one.
Freelance, right?
Freelance so far.
Okay.
Anyhow, and that was a conscious decision. And lo and behold, the Pathfinder people thankfully came out in droves, which helps everyone. And, the funny thing is, the Pathfinder people, they're so vocal. They're so great. It's like, from a community wise, and I'm putting down the 5e people, but the 5e people, for whatever reason, are much quieter. They just don't, they're just not as vocal and talking about, building their dragons or using the monster part system and how they're going to actually use it in their games. It's just, I
mean, the concept of the vocal minority exists, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like Pathfinder as a community feels like an underrepresented minority that feels like we are trying to persevere in the face of this juggernaut, right? Like if you're a Pathfinder player, it's a real concern. We have 150 people on our Patreon, and there are so many people who have joined our Patreon. We have a lot of community games. We have a full Forge server set up with multiple Foundry licenses for the community to use. And there are so many people who say, I can't play Pathfinder except online or except with this community because every time I go to a place, if I try to start a Pathfinder 2 game, I can't get enough players or there's a critical mass of people that you need in order for these RPGs to work. And it's a real issue. So as a Pathfinder 2 person, when you do find your Pathfinder 2 people, when you find your community, you cling on to that with two hands. And quite frankly, that was me. That was me being an island in the middle of a 5EC of Dungeon Dudes and Taking 20 and Professor Dungeon Master with their, 50,000 plus views. And, and me and Nonad and stuff, we're happy if we get 5. And I don't know, it created a sense of like, underdogness.
Okay. Well,
and now it feels like, I don't know, that's been taken away from us.
I get that, except I see what you're saying. It's almost like Star Wars. It's like the rebels are like, we're gonna have a party with the Imperials.
You know what it would be like?
Don't worry about it.
It would be like if the rebels took a commission to build Star Destroyers for the Empire.
Exactly.
And they were like, look, we're all in this together. And this is just going to give us more funds to be able to buy more X-Wings and more R2 units.
Yeah.
Okay, we're still fighting the good fight. But yes, the Empire, listen, have you seen the Empire's ships? They suck. We know how to build good ships.
Yeah.
We're going to build them some high quality Star Destroyers and we will get into this. Like that's kind of how it feels to me.
I would say that maybe an analogy that might work better for me is if the rebels were writing like histories of the Empire for the Empire, and the Empire's like, we need someone to write history books for our Imperial children that tell us all about the Empire's history. And so the rebels were like, well, we'll publish that. We'll do a deal to publish them for you.
Right.
Okay. It's supporting by the way, the Empire needs, but it might help the rebels if they do it right.
And by the way, I just want to say something. Like a lot of people who obviously didn't know me, don't know my channel. Some people even accuse me of being like Taking 20 and being anti-Pathfinder. And I'm like, I'm a Pathfinder 2 channel. I don't think you guys really paid attention to that. But also being elitist and gatekeeping. And it could be further from the truth. In fact, I think you could probably see right behind my head here. There's like a whole wall of 5e books and stuff like that. I own all the 5th edition books. Like, I think 5th edition is a fine game for people. I think it is a game that appeals to the middle. And I think that's good for a lot of people. And a game should only be as complex as you need it to be, and not any more. Because then you're just paying for that complexity and not getting anything out of it. So I do think it's a great game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not the game that I'm playing, and it's not the game that, and right now, for the most part, with the exception of present company, there is no really anybody else producing Pathfinder 2 content, right? We got what Roll for Combat has given us, and everything else has to come from Paizo. Their Pathfinder Infinite
Legendary
is
games.
But have they even released it yet?
Oh yeah. I actually have and also I have hold on. Monster.
There's a fair number. Like Owen did that Kickstarter with Ron's Adventure Path.
The Ages of Empires Adventure Path. This thing's a monster.
Outside of that AP, but I'm talking about like a real, true. I don't know.
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean. I mean, those felt like more like one-off type things. So, I guess from my expectations, like for me, it's like I get it from this one true source.
Yep.
You know, and now that one true source has, and again, I'm not trying to say that 5e is bad or people, but it feels like they made a deal with the devil for money, which I can't blame them for, because that's a business and that's what they do. But I don't like the implication, and I don't like the messaging, and I fear what the consequences could be. It's like, it's weird. I want them to make a lot of money, obviously, but I also kind of don't want them to make a lot of money with this, because I kind of want them to be like, that wasn't really worth our time. And
all right, how about this?
Focus on Pathfinder.
How about this?
All right, break it down for me.
Here it comes.
Okay.
So you yourself reviewed the Battles of Bestiary.
Yes.
And you guys loved the Pathfinder version, but you even liked the 5e version.
Arguably better.
Better.
Yeah.
Why was that?
Because we thought that, full stop, Pathfinder 2 is even too complex for me sometimes, right? Like I get overwhelmed, about rules and rules interactions, and remembering that, if something says plus grab, it doesn't mean that they actually grab them. It means they have to spend an action to grab them, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So it is nice to see a 5e implementation, right? Because I like BXD&D, like I like Dungeon World, I like these, low complexity, kick-ass rock and rolling games. There's just so much to 5e that doesn't appeal to me, because it is so shallow in its content. So to see the Battles of Bestiary monsters for 5e expressed in an interesting way, but done so in it's almost like better bang for your buck. Like you got as much coolness almost as the Pathfinder 2 monsters version, but like way simpler, and that is appealing.
So what you just described.
So there's some questions in chat.
Oh wait, I want to answer this one. I'll answer the question in a second. Chat? Yeah, let me just finish this. Steinwan, and I will answer that. I promise. So everything you described was as intended. So one thing we are doing here is I am trying to inject a lot of the Pathfinder DNA into our 5e products. And one of the first things I did was layout. I've talked about this in the past. The layout for the 5e books and the monster blocks stymies the ability to write interesting monsters. It is the number one reason, in my very strong opinion, that many of the monsters are not what they could be in 5e, because the restrictions of the stat block and the way the design lays out, it is extremely hard to make compelling, interesting monsters with a lot of abilities. If I tried to use the monster stat block for the Battles of Bestiary 5e, it would have been twice the size, and every monster would have been 2 pages long. You just can't do it. And that is a real concern and a real problem. Design follows function. So we were able to make much more interesting monsters because we are redefining what 5e should be by using Pathfinder mechanics. And you will find that in all of our books.
Yeah.
I believe Paizo's going to do the same thing. I've not seen their 5e book, so I can't talk to it.
Sure.
And I think that is a smart idea to not only, they're not, if it was one thing, it's like, okay, we're making 5e books and it is using all 5e mechanics and methodologies. Okay, maybe they're selling out. Maybe they're being insidious and they're saying,
if you want to go,
It leads into one of the 3 questions. Apologies to K Steinwan, because the question is almost the exact same thing that Stephen is talking about.
Okay, let's talk about it then.
The rules lawyer and a few others pointed out that they have talked to 5e players and younger players, and for the majority of them, it's less of a situation like Derik found on those sort of high information subreddits where it's a conscious rejection of Pathfinder 2e, having looked at both of them and decided to stay with 5e, or even just it's not 5e, so I won't look at it, but more of they're just not aware at this point in time. They just don't know what it is yet.
And that boggles my mind. That does boggle my mind.
It's surprising, but
no, it's not. It's not surprising.
Pathfinder's number 2, though.
It's surprising, but it's surprising.
It's not surprising.
But it's like Stephen said, it's not really that surprising when you think about how much low it is as number 2.
Yeah.
But if I go to a local game store and there's a D&D Adventures Guild, and I start talking to people about, hey, do you guys want to play Forbidden Lands or 7th Sea? And they look at me like they don't know what I'm talking about. I expect that. But if I say, what about a Pathfinder game? And they go, never heard of it.
That happens to me all the time.
That boggles my mind.
That happens to me all the time.
So given that is the case for some people like Stephen and Rules Lawyer and some others in the chat, to what extent would each of you think that having things like the 5e Abomination Vaults or the 5e Battle Zoo Bestiary, where people are like, these things that were converted out of another system into our system are really good. I wonder what that means about this system, which I also didn't even know about until now.
I don't know. I still come down. Obviously, I hope you guys are right. Obviously, I hope everybody out there is right. I hope I'm good. I hope I'm 100% wrong. I hope that Paizo's top line growth is like X 300%, and I hope that they crush it, and I hope that everybody gets to play. In fact, I don't even want people to play Pathfinder 2 or 5e. I want them to be playing Legend of the Five Rings and Forbidden Lands and 2D20 systems.
I want to be playing Pony Quest.
Okay, we are doing a Pony Quest Extreme.
There you go.
A charity game.
Awesome.
That we're going to be doing.
I'll tell you, hey, while we're on the subject, my favorite RPG of all time is Toon. Okay, we should be playing Toon. All right.
My favorite RPG of all time is Monster Hearts. By Avery Alder.
You talk about it a lot. I got to try it out. I'm actually very curious.
It's obviously a much more serious game, but
I like serious.
Exactly, me too.
Wait, let's talk about this question because we did get a super chat.
Let's go to case Taiwan because we held it up for a little bit.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I respect the super chat.
If it can be asked, can the topic of product accessibility be a factor in how everything we've discussed here today plays out? For example, Paizo has PDF and as well as options such as Pathfinder Nexus, whereas Wizards of the Coast, it's only Beyond, and Pathfinder has more options.
1,000%, yes. It is disgusting that WotC does this money grab where you have to buy everything twice.
Or 3 times.
Or 3 times. It is, and they know exactly what they're doing.
Some of the money off when you...
Yeah, Paizo gives you a discount. You link your Roll20 account with Paizo, so if you buy it, you get a discount. WotC is like, you got to pay full price 2 to 3 times for the same content. They will never release anything as PDFs, not because they're worried they're worried about people pirating them, and I'm sure that's part of it. Everything's PDF. Everything is in a PDF. They're the only company that doesn't release it as a PDF. And then you got to buy it with Beyond for the exact same price. And, oh, by the way, if you buy the deluxe edition, then I think you get the Beyond for free, by the way. So if you spend $80-$90 for their book, you get Beyond for free, which ends up being the same thing.
I'm pretty sure Sanderson gave stats of his own, mass market releases that show that his ebook sold way more than the paper book. So
and it will be fascinating because my own sales, PDFs blow away the physical copies, not just because of cost, but also because of portability. I mean, you've seen people at Gen Con in these places, they're carrying around like stacks of books.
Sure.
And it's also faster. I mean, quite frankly, I like my physical books.
I do too.
Just because I like, reading them and I like the smell and, just the physicality. And, and that's a big part of it. But when I'm running my games, it's all electronic. Everything's electronic.
Yeah, I still kind of am old school in that respect. But I mean, I think availability is a huge deal. would somebody go, wow, I really like getting PDFs of everything and I don't have to use D&D Beyond? Again, my limited experience, I'm not super into the 5e thing, so I'm sure everybody in the chat will tell me how stupid and wrong I am.
You're not. D&D Beyond's a pain in the ass.
Whenever I see people playing, even in person, I've seen this at Gen Con, I've seen this at Origins, I've definitely seen this in D&D Adventure Leagues, at local gaming stores. They are typically playing on a tablet or a laptop with D&D Beyond. I've even seen people sitting at a real table who use digital dice because they paid for them.
Yep.
They paid for their custom digital dice.
Oh, yeah.
And they use their custom digital dice while sitting at a real table with real people, and they're all just using D&D Beyond. I've seen people who won't play D&D unless it's on D&D Beyond.
Mm-hmm. So, by the way, we can only go until 3:30.
Correct.
Today.
We can't go
one
crazy.
more question from the chat, and then I'll let you two pick up.
I do want to mention real quick,
say.
though, because we are sort of at a midpoint. So, do come back tomorrow, because tomorrow is this day called April's Fools, or April 1st, or whatever you want to call it. And I think Derek might be releasing something fun, and I think we might be releasing something fun too, if we can get our act together.
Well, I don't know. Originally, it was going to be a joke, but now it might actually have to be real. So,
well, ours was also going to be a joke, but it might be real too. So we'll see. But and everyone who's enjoying the Battle Zoo Ancestries book for dragons, thank you. It is out now for Pathfinder, and Derek's going to be looking at it and reading over this weekend.
We're already well underway. Yeah.
And so anyone who's interested, go to battlezoo.com, and Mark is always around to answer your questions.
I often am, although I am working to make sure that we finish the thing for tomorrow.
That's true, but I meant if you have questions about your dragons and say, hey Mark, I want to do this crazy build, can I do that? And Mark will say, well,
awesome.
And then he's going to write this long diatribe.
You write a lot,
why.
Mark.
You write a lot.
Mark. You write a lot, Mark, on Reddit and stuff. Like
I know.
Like you people ask
he's
you
a
for
machine.
an inch. You give him a mile. Look,
well, I mean,
he's verbose.
I'm very prolific in terms of the content that I can put out when I'm excited about it. Like the thing that we're doing for tomorrow, I started today, and I have.
I came to him with the idea yesterday, last night.
You came to me at like 10 p.m. yesterday or
and
something.
I'm like, hey, I got this idea. Let's do it in one day.
I have like 2,000 or 3,000 words of it already, and I need about 4, and I'll finish it.
And then I gotta lay it out, so we'll see. I'll be up all night.
He's gotta lay it out. That's the thing. So I'm gonna try to get it.
You'll see. But don't forget, do subscribe and do like. Please like. Helps the algorithm, the magic algorithm. Right. But so what is your question, Mark? Sorry.
17 more minutes. So
17. Quick, go.
I will bring in one last question from chat, which was from Jess, who was wondering how much the fact that freelancers and even sometimes Paizo staffers write for both Paizo and Pathfinder and D&D. Obviously, D&D staffers do not, because they have a ridiculously tight non-compete agreement. But like, for instance, the Theros book in D&D, one of the authors is John Compton, who works at Paizos. So how does that factor into the equation of like whether it's different that the authors of Paizos books are writing for Wizards, because they kind of have been doing that all along. A lot of the content in Paizo starts with freelancers, and they have an even higher rate of also writing for WotC. That was the question.
What was the question? I don't understand.
The question was how does that factor in to this debate about the shift of things being written for both Pathfinder 2nd Edition and 5e, when already the freelancers were writing for both?
I don't know if it should. I don't know, to be honest.
The answer might be that it doesn't.
I don't think it does.
Was interesting, and to see if either of you had any opinions. And the answer
5e I find is a lot easier. Here comes the people shooting me. 5e is a lot easier to write for than Pathfinder, because Pathfinder.
Why is that?
Because Pathfinder has much tighter math, and you got to be very careful. Otherwise, it's very easy to make something unbalanced. And I'm talking about publishing.
Clarification to the question.
Publishing.
I didn't give it well.
Yeah, she said basically, is it still really a deal with the devil, given that we're all working for D&D already? I mean, that's fine, but last time
Jess, how are you, Jess?
Yeah, Hi. Last time I checked, they had different, tax identification numbers. So like I mean, they are different companies. They are producing different products. There are people who identify as Pathfinder 2 players. There are people who identify as D&D 5e players, even if the people behind the scenes are all going and grabbing a beer or two with each other after work in their extremely high cost of living environment. And, I think that for me and for the people, did I get a lot of downvotes on my video? Yes, but I got more upvotes. So, I mean, obviously there's a percentage of people there's a percentage of people. Yeah, that's true. Well, after this, we'll be screwed. Let me rest assured that I don't care.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Well, the other thing, people are like, "Oh, you're just doing it for money." I was like, we aren't actual YouTubers. Do you know how little money we make off of YouTube? It's not even.
Do you actually make
fun.
money off YouTube other than super chats?
If you ignore super chats, yes, I probably make about maybe $100 a month off of all.
Oh my God,
views.
That's a lot actually.
But remember, I put up
a pretty good amount.
Right. In fact, YouTube, I think, tells me I'm in like the top 5% of YouTube earners.
Definitely.
because I'm actually making $100 a month. So people are just silly. But anyways, I will say this: my hope is that you are all correct, and my hope is that Pathfinder 2 continues to grow and develop as a system. My hope is that other third-party publishers like Roll for Combat continue to embrace the system. I hope we see more things, and not just bestiaries, and not just ancestries, and not just classes, but systems and ideas and settings and growth. And I want to see it become a fully fledged tentpole system, and not just another strut that is held up by the largesse of 5e. And I thought that's what we had after 2 years, almost 3 of release. I thought, okay, well, we seem to be in the clear. Paizo is not going the 5e route. And then they announced that, and I was surprised. Does it make sense from a business perspective? Yes. Do they deserve their money? Of course. Could this be the best thing that's ever happened in the history of tabletop role-playing games? Sure.
Wow.
But I don't think it's going to be. And I hope you're all right. And I hope I am very wrong, because look, then I get to benefit, right? It's selfishly, this is about me wanting the best Pathfinder 2 content that I can get. And I am not going to be buying the 5th edition Abominations Vault. Okay. I already own it. And even if I didn't own it, I wouldn't be buying it for 5e. Not that there's anything wrong with 5e players or 5e, the system. It's just not for me. So Pathfinder is trying to win over these 5e players, but the 5e players are not trying to win over the Pathfinder 2 players, right? So it's not a two-way street. They're not, it's not an interchange of ideas. It is a one-way street, and that street is paved with gold. So that is where my concern comes in, that the nature of businesses, that greed, that the realities of money that people need to eat are going to win out, and we are going to see a reduction or a shift in priorities at Paizo in order to support this 5e endeavor.
That sounds like a closing statement. So, Stephen, what's your closing statement?
No, that was a closing statement. My closing statement is that D&D has been part of the cultural zeitgeist for 48 years. Everyone knows it. Everyone's heard of it, pretty much. Even if you know nothing about what it is, I go to random people because they're like, "What do you do?" I'm like, and I always have to start off, "Well, have you heard of D&D?" And they're always like, "Yes." I'm like, I kind of do that, and occasionally I'll say, "Oh, I do this thing called Pathfinder." And unfortunately, most people are like, "Huh?" And that's why, because doing this helps bring the Pathfinder name into the zeitgeist and makes it more accessible, I feel. And in fact, even little old me with the Roll for Combat, I think, has helped Pathfinder become more accessible, and more people have been introduced to it. And I see that in my orders. I'll see people order something for D&D, and then I'll see a few days or weeks later, I see that same person order for Pathfinder, which makes me think, as I look at those orders, thinking to myself, maybe we got someone converted over here, or at least they're interested enough to buy the books to take a look. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, they always played Pathfinder, but I like to think that maybe they didn't know anything about it, and this helped bring them over, at least enough to buy the books. And again, think about that from Paizo's point of view. Not only do they get to sell their books once to people who are playing D&D, they get to sell it twice, because then they get people who might be interested and come over and buy it for, for Pathfinder, which is good business sense as well. I think there's going to be a sea change in 2024, and a lot a lot is going to be happening with D&D movie coming out, with the new D&D edition coming out. I think they're hiring. WotC's hiring a lot of people.
I'll put on my tinfoil hat. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. By the way,
yeah, I do too. And I think it's going to be crazy in 2024. And I think Paizo is just doing everything in their power to position themselves for the craziness and try to benefit from it. I don't think they're converting. I think they're just saying, hey, check us out. We're here too. And they're just trying to make their brand better, well known. And I don't think they're abandoning Pathfinder. I don't think they would. Even if it really sells well, good. I hope it sells well. I hope it sells great. And then, they can, pay people more.
Yeah, pay people. Like, I mean, you know this. I am one of the biggest people who rails against this all the time. I wish every Paizo book was $100.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. I'm sorry if you can't afford it. It's all for free. You can buy the PDF. But
even the Pathfinder Society scenarios.
Yes.
And bounties.
Wow.
Yeah, go for it. Okay. Listen, I'm telling.
I didn't say how many of the scenarios you get.
I would not pay $100 for.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
sorry, and you know what? My SO is the one who's in charge of that department.
All right, fine. 50 for those.
Wow.
And 50 for the APs, the soft covers, and then 100 for the hardbacks. Okay. And then for something like Absalom or something, like you can go 125, right? That's fine. That thing's a massive tome.
Yeah, that thing's crazy.
And I'm good with that. And I would love for Paizo to be able to make, I don't know, $10 million just on selling Pathfinder 2. They could sell it to me and my friends. Okay. And we'll buy it and we'll pay for it. And I get that that's not very sustainable, but I wish it was. So again, for me, I want people to focus and be good and diverse and be good at what they're doing and diversify, right? I want, I like craftsmanship. I like artistry. I want people to be focused on the thing that they are truly passionate about. I mean, is it safe to say that Paizo isn't passionate about 5e, right? Like that's not what their wheelhouse is. That's not what they want to do. It says something, by the way, that if they can make better 5e adventures than the people who make 5e, but I want people focusing on their small little artsy project, right? I want to kickstart, I want to kickstart Blades in the Dark. I don't want to kickstart another 5e game. So I know that it's maybe not financially possible. And I would just worry that this era of 5e is going to drown out the little guy. And it's going to be, and not because they are like suppressing anybody, but because it's going to be so much money that you're just being hit over the head with it. Like you're stepping over $100 bills to pick up your nickels.
Yeah, I disagree because I come from the world of technology, and I build Fortune 500 websites for a living, and I have seen technology companies in the last 30 years come and go, and I've seen juggernauts that people thought were immovable, that would be a force in nature, disappear. And this could be a whole other show on why and how this happens, but I still contend that this market is so incredibly tiny comparatively to the rest of the world. It's like if Paizo sells, maybe they sell to, we'll say 20,000 people. Hell, I'll say they sell to 50,000 people. That is nothing. Okay, selling to 50,000 people, big deal comparatively. That is a very, very small market compared to, I don't know, everything Hasbro does with Monopoly and G.I. Joe and Barbie and all of that. So if D&D is about to explode, good, bad, or otherwise, in 2024, Paizo can go along with the ride and make sure that everyone knows who they are so that they are on their coattails. And maybe this is the first and last 5e product they ever put out, just to ride the wave that we're going to be seeing in the next couple of years. And then it's good for them.
Yeah, maybe. Again, I'm torn, right? I want the company to do well. I want them to make a lot of money. I'd love that, I'd love that pie in the sky view that people are going to read this Abomination Vaults conversion and think that was so much fun. And
they will.
My group has spent thousands of dollars on D&D Beyond and D&D 5th edition, but you know what? That adventure was so good. I'm going to go buy an entirely new game. I mean, that would be awesome.
I guarantee.
What percentage of them need to say that?
Yeah, you know what?
It's huge for Paizo, though. If 1 in 50 does,
I guarantee
that's a very
it.
low amount of people who check it out, but it's a very high amount of new Pathfinder players because D&D is so big.
This is what I would you do. Everyone, their homework assignments is as follows.
Okay.
Go to various YouTube channels and watch rankings or reviews of, quote, all the WotC adventure paths to date. And they have a fair number now. They have, about 20 or so. How many of them go into, how many of them are in the F and the D range is like half. It's stunning how many of them they do. And these are people who like 5e, who ran the entire adventure path, and they still hated it.
And what does that say that 5e is as popular as it is, and everybody seems to freaking hate it? So what does that even mean? I don't even understand. I don't even understand this customer base. You know what?
It is a weird customer base.
I rescind everything I said because in this chat and in the prior one, because you're right. I don't understand any of these people. I don't understand this demographic, and I don't understand what they're doing. Obviously, I'm a weird person because as I love, I used to play D&D miniatures competitively. I would enter tournaments at Gen Con, and then I would go to the Indie Games on Demand booth and go play alpha play tests of whatever Jason Morningstar's newest game was. So obviously, I am a very weird individual in this space, and I am not qualified to offer you an opinion on anything. So
I'm not even sure you're weird.
You're not weird. You're the Pathfinder demographic.
Here's my
that's probably true. That's true.
Here's my take based on the people I've talked to and seen of why you're not so weird for a Pathfinder 2 player, Derik, but that also means that your closing statement might not be as effective because you're not so weird. Because your closing statement, you talked about the fact that Pathfinder 2, there are people who, they're Pathfinder 2 players. They play Pathfinder 2, that's what they play. There are 5e players, they play 5e, that's what they play. But you play a lot of other systems other than Pathfinder 2, and I think you're typical. I mean, maybe not that Pathfinder 2 players play a ton, but I think many Pathfinder 2 players have played other systems. And for 5e players, they mostly have only played 5e.
That is true.
Maybe not even another edition of D&D.
Right. But that is very much
because
to
5e exploded so much. 5e is the only thing they've ever played.
Right, but
they may not even know that the other ones exist.
Yeah, that's true. They don't know what things exist.
That's very much to WotC's advantage, though, right? Like, it is not to Paizos' advantage that someone like me who really enjoys Pathfinder 2. You're considering
it to be a zero-sum game.
Yes.
But it's not, because of the fact that Paizo and the rest of the industry have a lot of trouble getting anyone to look right. The tabletop RPG industry, like Stephen says, has a lot of trouble getting anyone to look at it, period. So if D&D can grow by times 10, while also, as you've seen from Mike Sayer, and I can confirm from everything I know that he's right, that Paizo is growing, is doing better than they thought, right? That means that they're doing it not by taking away, not in a zero-sum way, by taking players from Pathfinder 2. Those are players who often, might play multiple games anyway, and so they're going to play both. They're doing it by getting brand new people who've never played before. That's why a lot of their people just seem like they've only played 5e. And so those are players who weren't taken. It wasn't zero-sum, but who could potentially someday, because they're now playing RPGs in general, some percentage of them might move on. They might be like, well, they're not a whole lot of builds in 5e. Maybe, but I've heard Pathfinder has them.
I just consider
about it.
I consider it zero-sum in that each individual customer has X amount of dollars in their wallet they are going to spend on tabletop role-playing games this year, and that can go to System A, that can go to System B.
I don't think that's true.
That's actually not true.
I don't buy that. I don't buy that premise, because I think that
you don't think that consumers have limited funds.
No, I do think they have limited funds
that they've pre-budgeted to tabletop RPGs that can't expand.
Every conference I went to at Gamma is contrary to that. Is that you'd be amazed what they will spend on their hobbies.
I know I will.
No, and they will too. Okay. It's not just you. Trust me.
All right.
I think that you can get people to grow what they're going to do by raising interest. And yes, there is a certain extent where they're going to run out of wanting to spend, but it's probably not because they spent tons of money on WotC books. It may have been because they bought really expensive dice made from a meteorite, or like terrain,
or they spent $100 on Pokemon cards.
I'm just saying,
or miniatures, some kind of, and then they wouldn't be willing to pay even 2% of that much for the books that they're using to play the game.
I'm just saying that if the if the typical 5e player is sort of in this bubble and they have this budget and they don't even know that these other games exist, then by definition, all that budget is currently being spent on 5e or 5e related products. Whereas if we are saying that the average Pathfinder 2 player is a more cosmopolitan gamer who is playing in a bunch of different systems, that same limited budget is now being dispersed amongst many hats. That's all I'm saying is that.
And all I'm saying is that if that 5e player that we're talking about, right? Let's say they have X amount of money that they're now spending only on 5e, but before that they were spending it on computer games and they weren't spending on tabletop RPGs at all, or they were saving it for retirement, or they were spending it on a movie. And so now they are spending it on tabletop RPGs. So they didn't get to that point because they used to be spending it on Pathfinder 2 and now they're spending it on 5e. They grabbed that tabletop amount out of not tabletop. So that's sort of where I'm getting at, that they don't have a set amount they were going to spend on tabletop. They have a set amount in total, and that can grow how much is going to tabletop. And once they're in tabletop with 5e, there's some chance, I'm not saying it's high, obviously, most of them seem to be staying in 5e, and but there's some chance they move on to another system, and that system could be any of the other systems. So I do believe that a rising tide raises all ships.
Oh, that's a good ending point for me.
See, Derek?
Yeah, I think we all have slightly different perspectives.
Just be more
I
positive,
agree with
Eric.
Stephen. I tried to be unbiased until the end there, where I wanted to give my
I would say
I
that
was still pretty biased.
Wednesday morning I was at a -7. Okay, where -10 means like I'm burning my books. So all right, so maybe I was a -6. After this discussion, the points you've raised, some of the interesting points you've raised, I am now a -3.
Ooh.
So I am still viewing this, I think, as it's going to be, for me personally, as a selfish consumer, I think this is going to not help me.
Yeah.
But I am maybe not as doom and gloom about some of the other prospects. I also certainly respect and never have doubted that this is a great business move. It's a smart decision. They should be doing this. Everybody should be riding 5e's coattails to the moon, right? I should be doing it, and I'm not. And the reason I'm not is because I'm stupid and I'm a bad businessman. And we've discussed this at length. So, hitch a ride to the horse that's leaving town. That's the way to go.
Hey, being halfway convinced is halfway more than most people who have an internet discussion or debate. So I do appreciate, in the spirit of coming in with an open mind and listening, that that's what you feel after this.
And actually, to make you feel better, Derek, when I first saw the Kickstarter, and maybe I've just digested this longer, and I saw that Paizo was doing Kingmaker for 5e, I actually felt very similar to the way you felt just yesterday. Like, I was like, oh my God, how dare they? I feel like betrayed that they were doing it. And then, it took 2 years for them to make the thing. It's still not even out. So
still not out.
I don't feel so bad anymore. But the point is, like, the more I thought about it, it's like nothing changed. They're still coming out with books on a regular basis. If anything, Pathfinder 2nd Edition has been way stronger in their lineup than they was for first edition, and if anything, everything's been roses ever since,
which means it can only go down from here, Stephen.
No, we can only go up. You gotta be positive, man.
We've got the optimist and the pessimist.
I know
out there.
Things are too good. Something needs to break.
Things can keep getting keep going better.
Look, and I hope they do, and quite frankly, it has been a golden I like 4E, so it was really good for me. So, but it's been a golden decade, because the sort of power vacuum that D&D left when it sort of, we'll say, sidestepped the throne during the 4E era, just allowed this unbelievable resurgence of indie games and interesting game development that really, really, really scratched a lot of my gaming itches and allowed me to spend a lot of money into the gaming environment that wasn't necessarily going to, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate like Hasbro. And then 5e came out and started with a whimper and a whisper, and sort of quietly built itself into the 80,000 pound gorilla in the room. And I have really enjoyed the gaming environment that I have been allowed to be a part of between Kickstarter and some of the other indie options and third press options and small press publishers and people like yourselves. But it was nice to get back in bed with another big company, in the form of Paizo. And so I just hope that they continue to produce the same quality, consistency, and quantity of books that they have been. And I hope that, Spaceballs 2, The Quest for More Money. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
That we don't go that route, Again, if they do, mazel tov. But if they, I won't be happy about it. I'll be happy for them, but I won't be happy about it.
I mean, Mark knows what's coming down the pipe. I know what's coming down the pipe, at least for the next year. So I think you'll be
Book of the Dead.
Book of the Dead. And what they Impossible Lands or whatever it was called, they just announced.
Yeah, Impossible Lands.
That one looked great.
Travel Guide. There's a lot of good stuff.
Travel Guide.
Knights of Last Wall. Like
Knights.
Goodness, there's some good content coming out. And stuff
and that's the stuff announced.
Yeah, I know. I'm not gonna say the stuff that isn't announced.
Well, no, I know, but I'm just saying that's a lot of coming out. And then new Adventure Paths. And I think, and someone even said that Adventure Paths have really evened out. Their discovery of the 3 Adventure Paths.
Oh, it's so much better than the 6. I'll never play another 6. I'm sorry. I'll never play another 6 again.
Is
My
really
favorites
nice.
Have been 6, all of them, but I really like the 3 format.
Yeah,
the 3 format to me is I'm actually waiting for the 3 format that's like 5 to 14 or something. That's
in the middle.
Yeah, in the middle. That's actually like my favorite element. But anyways, I think it's fantastic. So
I'm still waiting for the 20-part Adventure Path as Eric Mona originally envisioned.
I might actually like that too.
That was his original vision, 20 parts. Can you imagine?
I love it.
No one would finish them ever.
Of course not.
All right, so we had a hard time limit.
I gotta go.
That's a hard time limit, and already Derek's in the negatives because he's got to go. But
I said 3:30, but realistically, I knew 3:45. But
okay, also, that's fine.
Also, you guys keep doing this. I have another live stream tonight.
Oh, that's right.
7 o'clock. Somehow these always seem to line up with the days I do my live streams.
Well, you know why?
I canceled mine last night
because we're cool.
We just went so far over.
Yeah.
So if you wanna yell at me, if you want to tell me I'm an idiot, if you want to super chat me to tell me I'm an idiot, you're very welcome to do that tonight at my YouTube channel, Knights of Last Call, where I will be going live and probably discussing this some more. I might rip into some particularly idiotic internet haters and and of course, we'll probably try to talk about like Dungeon World or Legend of the 5 Rings and how that can make you a better GM.
Yeah, I want to play Dungeon World. Everyone talks about it. I really got to try that.
It's so good. It's right here.
I know. I love it. It looks the art's beautiful.
It is.
Well, that's the other one that everyone does, powered by the apocalypse. It's either 5e or powered by the apocalypse.
That is true. Avatar is powered by the apocalypse.
That's right.
I have that. Like, they sent out the PDFs to the Kickstarters the other day, or like a couple weeks ago, and it is pretty sweet.
I gotta check these out, but I don't have enough time. Awesome. I barely have enough time to play my own games.
That's right. There is a guy in our Patreon, and he set a life goal. He's probably like 50 or so. He played 7 games in 1 week that were 7 different systems.
Nice.
Can you imagine?
No, that's called Gen Con.
Right, well, yeah, but this is like in his everyday life.
Oh, well, that's pretty impressive.
That's quite impressive.
Not at a con, yeah.
Yeah, my record was I played. This is before Pathfinder got gigantic. As oh my god, I think I played something like 40 or 50 hours of D&D in 4 days at Gen Con. And I was done, and I still was like, I want more. I wanted more D&D. I couldn't get enough.
Yeah, I've had some Gen Con runs that getting back into Magic the Gathering and board games kind of interrupted my RPG fests at Gen Con, but I've had some pretty deep runs at Gen Con myself. So, all right, gentlemen. Well, it was a pleasure to have this conversation with you. Hopefully, hopefully the internet is somewhat nicer to me now because I had this conversation.
a little bit
We'll
nicer
see.
to you, or people can come.
Wait, halfway. They were -6 before, and maybe now they're -3.
Yeah, well,
That's
you
true.
can
They
pay.
They still hate me, just not as much.
Yeah, but the thing is, people can come by and pay you money to hate you, and then you will have to say the hate on your stream tonight.
Well, and this is the last thing I will say to this wonderful audience that we have going here. Let me tell you something. I am pissed off. And the reason I'm pissed off is because I will do a video where I spend over an hour discussing like the idea of flowcharts and game board design as a mechanic for creating interesting dungeons, and like, how you can use game board methodologies or even level design methodologies from like Metroid or something like that in order to create more interesting dungeons with player agency and have it lead to interesting decisions. It'll go for an hour and I'll get like 800 views. And then I post some stupid 9-minute rant about why I think Paizo is dumb. And that gets like 3,000 or 4,000 views in a single day. So really, it's your fault. If you're mad that those videos exist, it's your fault. It's your fault.
It's not
the algorithm's
fault.
It's the algorithm.
If you never watched those videos and you only watched my 1-hour dungeon design videos, but you would never see those other videos. You would only see awesome dungeon design.
I saw a lot of responses. Actually, I heard about it because I saw people who had watched your videos and they were like, "Wow, I really like Derek's 1-hour dungeon videos, and I'm very disappointed by this 9-minute video." So I guess they watched both.
Well,
most of the people I saw who were talking about it had watched your other videos, and they were like, maybe I won't watch the dungeon videos anymore.
Right. Well, we also talked about that before, right? Like the Pathfinder community is sort of this vocal minority, right? Which means that there's sort of this weird like stick togetherness, and we're one and we have to stick together. And so when you do voice dissent, like when I didn't like Monsters of Myth, like we got a ton of, I got just almost as many dislikes for saying I didn't think Monsters of Myth was a great book as we did for saying this 9-minute video, like we don't think this 5e moves. So whenever you basically say anything bad about 5e or the game that you're quote unquote supporting, you get trashed. I mean, that's just the way it works. So.
Man, it looks like look at Howard Stern and the famous when they did the research and they're like,
I love that.
And they're like, story. What's the average listener? It's like, the average listener listens to Howard Stern for like 3.5 hours. It's like, what about people who hate Howard Stern? Oh, they listen for 4 hours. You're like, what?
Right. And they said, how could that possibly be? And the researcher said, when we asked them, and they said the same exact, both the people who loved him and the people who hated him said the same answer. We can't wait to hear what he's going to say next.
It's true.
And it's so true.
Yeah.
So
Derik doesn't like human nature. That's
correct.
What it comes down
to. I also,
to.
by the way, fundamentally disagree with the assertion that a video like that is clickbait, because
I don't think it was clickbait.
It wasn't, because my video said Paizo and D&D are joining up. There was a picture of me being upset about it, and I said, "Is Pathfinder in trouble?" And then I wanted to describe about why I thought that meant that Pathfinder was in trouble, and I was upset about it. So,
I think it was algorithm bait.
No.
I don't even think
it was that. I think it was just your honest opinion.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like I could have typed in Arial size 12 in the thumbnail and been like a video about Pathfinder. I mean, I could have done that, but yes, like it's actually kind of ridiculous that I don't think people actually understand what clickbait is. So, like, if I had put something like 5e adventure now. But you click on it, and I'm talking about Legend of the Five Rings 5th edition. Like that's clickbait, right? Like I'm not talking about D&D 5e. But
I don't think you're going to convince a lot of people by
no, of course not.
Litigating the definition of clickbait, though. I think your other arguments during the panel were more.
Joe in the chat said fear mongering. I'll buy fear mongering.
So actually, I have to go too because my pipe exploded again.
Well,
so
I have to go also,
we all gotta go.
Finish this thing for tomorrow.
Hey, Derik, you're becoming a regular, and look at this.
I know. Well, listen, it turns out when you work from home and you have a fairly flexible schedule with a boss who's very good about it, and you're able to get your work done in the morning, you can sometimes be free for these. So feel free to invite me to your next one.
We got to get the round table. We just got to get Rules Lawyer, we get Nonat, we get Derik. Look at how it's played.
On yet, but he watches the stream, so he must be free during this.
We're gonna get everyone. We're gonna get everyone on this one gigantic stream that will be way too many people. And then we will discuss Legend of the Five Rings.
Oh, let's do it. Well, you know what? We'll do a charity live stream, and I'll take you guys, and we'll take you through the process of making your samurai and see if you can uphold the virtues of Bushido while still dealing with a very human soul.
I love Legends of I mean, I'm talking about the philosophical aspects. Sure. I love that. The Five Rings. So
you would love this.
Yeah, I gotta check it out.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Every single person has to leave. Bye.
We all gotta go. See ya.
Take care.